Haley Frequencies Open. Welcome to Star Trek Discoverage, a live podcast that boldly goes into excruciating detail about this week's episode of Star Trek Discovery. I'm your host, Aaron Coker, a.k.a. Caliban, and I gotta say, of all the days on my service on a starship, Taco Tuesday is definitely my favorite day. Joining me on this show, I usually say usually, but this time it's unusually on the show tonight, is not Ella, my usual co-host. Instead, he's a science fiction writer and editor and the father half of the podcasting duo Generations Geek on the Chronic Rift Podcast Network. It's Scott Pearson. Scott, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. The co-host of my co-host is my co-host, I guess. So we're in the co-host continuum here. Generations Geek is a more or less family-friendly celebration of geekdom, but the daughter half is around 4,000 miles away right now in England. How are you coping?
It's very strange because in this futuristic sci-fi world we live in, I video call and chat with her quite regularly.
Sure.
Tonight she's actually in Poland.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we'll be visiting Auschwitz tomorrow. She's doing a World War II tour of Europe.
Okay. That's great. And it's a study abroad program, right?
Yes, she's going to Queen Mary University in London for 2 semesters, but she had a week off, so she's traveling about on the continent.
That's great. I was talking to her before, and she was telling me that in England, they spend a lot less time actually in class than I guess we do in higher education in the U.S.
Yes.
And so being in England, she had a chance to attend the Destination Star Trek convention in Birmingham this year, which, I don't know, I'm jealous. You?
I am, yes.
Yeah, and she got to see the What We Left Behind DS9 doc, which she said was great. And, of course, we've got coverage of that and her time there on a previous episode of this show. She's also got an interview with Andrew Robinson and Max Gradenchik, and that's all in a previous episode of this show. So, listeners, go check that out. Also joining us on the show tonight, he's the co-host of the Delta Flyer podcast, as well as Stargate Weekly. It's Thad Haight. Thad, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
Good to have you. Explain like I don't know what a Delta Flyer is, and tell me what you talk about on the Delta Flyer podcast.
Okay, well, the Delta Flyer, it was a special shuttle that was designed on the show on Star Trek Voyager for use in the Delta Quadrant. They needed something a little beefier than a regular shuttle, but yeah. And my co-host Stuart and I, we both really like the Delta Flyer in general. The design, the whole storyline where they had to build it and everything. So we had been doing Stargate SG-1 podcast, Stargate Weekly, for a little while, and we decided we wanted to also do a Voyager show, so Delta Flyer just seemed like a perfect name for it. Basically, what we do is, it's the standard podcast. There's, however many hundreds of them out there already. Right. We watch an episode of the show, we talk about it.
Are you tackling?
I don't know. Are there any other podcasts that do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll do some research. I'll get back to you. Do you do them in like an order? Are you going like
we've started at the beginning. We're going the whole way through.
Okay.
Right now we're in season 2 of Voyager.
Okay. I just finished a watch through of DS9, and I did a TNG a year or two back, and I'm getting into Voyager now. And I'm still in like the first season or so. And I've noticed, you know how it is with Trek shows. They start off kind of a little shaky, and then they kind of firm up as they go. Do you think Voyager does the same thing? Because to be honest, I haven't really watched
to some extent, yes. But yeah. I think Voyager honestly does a pretty good job with season 2. Voyager season 2 is much better than TNG's, and I would even say it's better than DS9. There's a couple great episodes in season 1 of DS9, but there's also some not so great episodes. Yeah. Voyager, when we watched season 1 of Voyager, there was only one episode that I regretted watching.
Okay, which one's that?
Ex Post Facto. The one where Tom Paris is accused of murder and has the fake memories of committing murder implanted in his head. And, yeah. But anyway, overall, I think Voyager season 1 holds up fairly well as far as season 1s of Star Trek spinoffs go. obviously, it's a lot of times they take a little while to find their footing.
Yeah. I don't know if you would agree with this, but I feel like Voyager is kind of the middle child of the Trek family. I don't know if you've ever seen the meme online where it's like a picture of a family, like a Sears portrait from the 80s, and it's got the mom and the dad and like the kid, and then there's like a goth kid, and then they've all got like the names of the shows on them. So like the dad is original series, the mom is TNG. I feel like Voyager is kind of the nerdy, sort of somewhat not forgotten, but possibly neglected middle child.
I think it is now.
Okay, sure.
In the 90s, I'd say that was DS9.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. Yeah, I don't know where that leaves Enterprise. I'd say that Enterprise is the weird neighbor played by David Leisure or something like that. Other than to give your show context, do you think viewers should give Voyager another look if it's been a while?
Yes, I definitely do. I think, obviously, with any show, there are good things and there are bad things. Voyager definitely, I think, could have been better than it was, but I think it's still pretty good on its own. I think if it had been made in the 2000s and was more of a serialized show, it really would have benefited from that format. But I think it does really work as it is. The characters are really good, and they do some just great sci-fi stories. So I think it holds up, and I think if you are not sure about Voyager, maybe give it another shot.
Okay, well, you heard it here first. I will definitely do that. I'm doing that now, so I'll let you know what I come up with. We are awaiting the return, all of us, of Star Trek Discovery on January 17th next year, but we've got a chance to look back on what we've gotten so far. Thad, what'd you think of the first season of Discovery?
Overall, I liked it.
Yeah.
My only big gripe was I thought they spent a little too long in the mirror universe, and they spent not nearly enough time wrapping up the story at the end of the season.
Did you want them to have more time, after having solved the problem with the Klingons and everything?
I wanted them to not solve the problem with the Klingons in one episode.
Or in one act of one episode, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I feel that. I understand that gripe. Scott, we've talked about the show before, but since we've talked, have you had any new insights about Discovery?
Not necessarily that I can share.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So, Scott knows secret things.
I would just say I enjoyed the first season. I think that it is very, very fast-paced storytelling, and I would often appreciate if we got a little bit more breathing room in the episodes.
Okay.
I think it's a very, very contemporary way to tell a Star Trek story, and I think it's bringing in a lot of younger people that really like the slam bang action.
Sure.
So I'm glad it's doing that, but yeah, I could use another episode or so to slow things down a little bit.
Well, we've just seen the second in a series of 4 short films set in the universe of Star Trek Discovery called Short Treks. This week's is called Calypso, and before we start, as always, we're setting a course for the spoiler zone. So be warned, listeners. We're glad you've decided to join us, but if you haven't seen the episode, spoilers are incoming. The official synopsis for Calypso is, after waking up in an unfamiliar sickbay, Kraft finds himself on board a deserted ship, and his only companion and hope for survival is an AI computer interface. The teleplay for this episode is by Michael Chabon, who is probably best known as the author of Cavalier and Clay and Wonder Boys. He's also written for the screen previously with Spider-Man 2, John Carter, and he's one of the writers for the upcoming Hasbro Cinematic Universe. Do you guys know about this?
What now?
No, that's a new one to me.
Mask, Visionaries. Anybody the right age to have played with these toys? Remember Mask? It's kind of like Transformers and G.I. Joe had a baby together. Just me. It's just me. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be with Paramount, and there are talents like Michael Chabon, Chehodari Coker, who worked on Luke Cage, amongst other things, and Sons of Anarchy, Nicole Perlman, who worked with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and Brian K. Vaughan are all going to make this toy thing the new MCU. You watch.
Is it gonna?
I'm more
include My
excited
Little
about
Pony?
him.
Go ahead. What?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying I'm more excited to see what he does with his work on the Picard series.
Yeah, I guess. But I'm really looking forward to that Visionaries series, though.
I'm just wondering if the Hasbro Cinematic Universe is also going to include Transformers and My Little Pony. Because if they can manage to combine all of that into one thing, that would be a sight to see.
The smart thing is to build to it, right? You start with your G.I. Joe, and then over the course of several films, you bring them together as the Plastic Avengers. That's what you have to do. The story for this episode is by Sean Cochran and Michael Chabon. Sean Cochran is a television writer. He's a staff writer for Discovery, and he wrote Despite Yourself, the first season Discovery episode. And it was directed by Olatunde Osunsanmi, who is a Nigerian-American director and producer, and directed The Butcher's Knife Cares Not for the Lamb's Cry in the first season of Discovery. Here's a fun fact about the episode. The word Calypso comes from the Greek kalypso, to hide or to deceive. And another fun fact, the word has a common etymological origin with the English word hell. Calypso was a nymph in the Odyssey, and enchanted Odysseus with lots of singing and lots of weaving, apparently. Very seductive. One more fun fact, Calypso was the name of the captain's yacht on the Enterprise D. The name of the yacht was changed to the Cousteau for the Enterprise E going forward. So, with all that in mind, or throwing that all away, what did you guys think of Runaway? Thad, what were your impressions of the show?
You mean Calypso?
Oh, yeah, sorry, Calypso. I'm looking at my the wrong notes here.
I enjoyed it. I'm not entirely sure, like... I did enjoy it, but I felt like it is very much Star Trek adjacent. Yes, it's set on a Starfleet ship, but nothing about the story required it to be so.
Okay, I can see that. What for you would then be something that is dead on Star Trek then, not just adjacent?
If it in any way tied into existing Star Trek.
Okay. So I guess I'll go back to my original question, which was asked in error, but now is correct. What did you think of Runaway? Same thing. I
no.
Same thing.
Runaway was a little more. It was a little more grounded in Star Trek because we had an actual character from Discovery in it, and we got to see We got to see Tilly acting like Tilly. Now, I had a few plot issues with Runaway, but actually, I listened to your episode about Runaway to prepare for this, and a lot of what you guys were saying was what I thought as well.
Then I know.
But this one, I enjoyed it. It's a nice little sci-fi story. I think overall I enjoyed the story better than I enjoyed the story in Runaway, because the story didn't have quite as many holes as Runaway did.
Yeah.
But it felt like a sci-fi short film that happened to take place on a Star Trek set.
Yeah, I can see that. Scott, what about you?
I quite enjoyed it, but yeah, it wasn't as tied directly in to our regular cast, but it was a very sweet little story, playing well off the Calypso mythology, and good acting, good performance from both of them. And I'm kind of a sucker for old movies, and so when
the Paramount Archive,
so suddenly when we're watching Fred Astaire and Audrey Hepburn, I was hooked right there.
right. We looked all through the ship's library, and there was no Warner Brothers films in there. It was weird. Yeah, okay. I can see that, and the connection to the mythological idea of Calypso, I think, is definitely is present too. If only nymphs had a 4,000K TV like the Discovery has. So they don't have holodecks, I guess, but if you can just project holograms, it makes movie watching a whole nother experience, which is kind of cool. You guys might have to hold me back here. I don't know what it is, but I was disappointed. There was speaking of craft, I mean, there was craft definitely evident in this episode, as there is in all episodes of Discovery so far. But I felt really cheated by the promos promising something really sort of spooky and weird, and maybe it was just me watching too many Ridley Scott movies or something like that, but I was expecting something that was going to be real sort of arch and dire, and instead it was very touching, and I didn't want to be touched. Don't touch me.
No, I'd forgotten how the previews really were heavy on when he first woke up. Yeah. And it did really play like it was going to be a dark, scary episode, maybe because they were running those previews in like around Halloween time or something. I don't know. But it was a completely different show than what the previews led you to believe.
Yeah. Plus, I have to throw away all my questions that I had prepared about scary episodes of Star Trek that I wrote around the time of Halloween. But I'll ask one just in general before we dig into the specifics of the episode. Do you guys think that Trek could be or should be doing more spooky stories? I think that spooky isn't something that Trek often tries. And when it does, I'm not sure it pulls it off specifically well. Are there any Voyager episodes you think that really land the spooky well?
Oh, well, there's The Haunting of Deck 12.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, ghost stories.
Other than that, spooky on Voyager, not too much. When I think spooky Star Trek, my first thought is TNG Genesis.
Okay, yeah, that's spooky. What's the one too where it's specifically a ghost story, where the guy's his energy ghost is haunting the warp nacelle or whatever? I can't remember the title of it.
I really not sure.
I'm blanking on that one.
I think I just made this up. Forget that. I'm going to write that up as a spec.
There's also the DS9 episode Empok Nor is very spooky.
Yeah.
There's the episode of TNG where they're being sort of abducted in their sleep and
schisms. Yeah.
That one's scary.
I think that here and there trying to mash up the sci-fi Star Trek thing with horror can be pretty effective. It's something that I don't think you want to go to the well too often in a Star Trek show.
Yeah.
But here and there when they've done it, they have done some pretty effectively creepy shows.
Yeah, the Borg, I suppose, at least initially, are very scary. I think the real key to pulling off horror or something scary is dread, and I think dread is hard to maintain in a world of on-demand tea, Earl Grey hot, and everything's so evenly lit, But in Discovery, the lighting's different, of course, but there's a sense of dread hanging over things, and in some ways, I think that it's what people complain about when they say that Discovery doesn't feel like Trek. Because you've got this sense that things can go wrong, they can fly off the handle and people could die because we've seen it happen. So the door's open for you to do shows where scary things happen instead of a show where Tom Paris pulls his own tongue out and then the next scene he's cracking jokes in his bathrobe. No offense, Dad. Well, in this episode specifically, we learn a few things, and I wanted you guys' thoughts about the particular episode, but also what we're finding out in these short treks. We seem to be, like Dad said, seeing out of context things, but I wonder if they will have come into focus as having more context as we get into season 2. In this episode, we've got this guy who is in this escape pod. He's picked up by, presumably, the Discovery that we know and have followed, and he's informed that it's lain dormant for 1,000 years. So what do you guys think is going on there?
It doesn't make any sense to me.
Fair enough.
We have no idea what's going on. The Zora, the computer AI, which says that the crew's been gone for 1,000 years, but that still doesn't tell us where the Discovery is and how that relates to the time period of the normal show, because obviously the normal show doesn't have a Zora AI.
Yeah.
So there's been some sort of indeterminate time period between what we know of Discovery and when Zora is on Discovery, and then there's 1,000 years after that. So, yeah, we just have no idea what's going on here.
Any theories on what's happening, Thad?
We don't have enough information. I really have nothing. What I can say is it doesn't, like, at first glance, it doesn't make any sense to me that the Discovery has been completely abandoned for 1,000 years.
Right.
So we know that he comes from a planet that is in their database. So that means that it's not like, it's most likely not somewhere way out in the middle of nowhere.
Right. And are you saying too that he is, presumably he hasn't traveled through some kind of time warp, so he's from some planet that's been settled in the 31st, or no, I can't do the math, but 1,000 years after Discovery's
33rd.
time. Right.
Yeah.
So that's why he doesn't know what a taco is.
Right, and that's what makes sense, because Discovery says that Zora says that there weren't human settlements there in her records.
Sure.
Yeah, so that makes sense that he's from farther in the future, or, well, I guess the present, but anyway. What doesn't make sense to me is Discovery is within shuttle warp range of this planet. So that means Discovery itself is not on the far side of the galaxy or anything like that. How has it just sat there, forgotten about for 1,000 years?
Right. Yeah. I don't know either, if I'm taking the ball back. It's one of those things that, especially one of the things that I was really looking forward to with the short treks is seeing how they dealt with a 15 to 20 minute segment of story where we can't have Harry Kim come out and tell us, everything that they found out in the scan or whatever. And so that's why I don't care. That's why I don't care about where the girl beams to at the end of Runaway. Do you know what I mean? Like it takes care of itself. She beams somewhere and it's fine. But yeah, this is specifically they needed the sets of Discovery because they weren't going to build a new set, and they wanted to tell this very specific story, and so to do that they had to make it 1,000 years in the future, and so maybe it has nothing to do with the run of the show Discovery. Just at some point in the future, Discovery will be abandoned, and I'm hoping this is what it is. It will somehow tie into what is happening in season 2 with the lights and the Red Angel and all that mess that's going to go on.
Well, maybe we'll get Zora in season 2.
Yeah, maybe. Why did you guys pick up any significance in the name Zora?
No, I looked that up and nothing really leaped out at me as having any significance. Whereas Calypso, obviously, the Calypso Odysseus story is. I mean, this is a retelling of that.
Yeah. What did you guys think about the significance or lack thereof of his name or his not name or whatever? He originally tells Zora that his name is Quarrel, and then later on he says that it's Craft.
I think it's just some sort of cultural thing where he's from that we don't get the full story on because it's only 15 minutes.
Yep.
Because when we get to the end, and she's asking about his real name, and he says, "Well, you'd give me that name or whatever." So it implies that there is a more complicated cultural thing going on behind the scenes there about how his people handle their names and sharing their names or giving names.
Sure. They have like a private name and then possibly like a descriptive, like public name.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense to me. Did anybody get a real WALL-E vibe from this episode?
Yeah, a little bit.
WALL-E, the Pixar movie. You got a machine consciousness that's left alone for hundreds of years with a classic film and sort of develops its own sort of way of thinking and then connects with an outsider. I thought there was parallels there.
I also got a little shades of Hal when we first got our look at the little round monitor on the wall watching him.
When we were tricked into thinking that it was going to be sinister, but instead she gives him tacos. If only Hal had given everybody tacos, that would have been a totally different movie.
Yeah. I think you should try the tacos, Dave.
We're out of salsa, Dave.
I really like the line, "What's a Tuesday?"
Yeah, exactly. Well, the voice of Zorro is played by Annabelle Wallis, who's another Paramount actress, I guess. She was in the Mummy movie, which is, of course, directed by Alex Kurtzman. So they're keeping it in the family there. Have you guys seen Aldous Hodge on, I guess he was on Leverage before? Yeah.
Yeah, Leverage was a lot. I really enjoyed that show, and he was pretty good in that. He was the techie computer guy.
Okay, cool. I have not seen that, but I will check it out on your recommendation.
It's fun. I mean, it's not like, an amazing feat of television master.
Don't walk it back now. I'm gonna go watch it.
But it's a fun show. It's because it's like every episode is a heist, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I guess you guys helped me. I didn't have to go as ham as I thought on the episode. It's fine. It's just that sort of thing where you get something that you're not. Santa brought you something other than what you asked for, and then once you calm down, you realize how warm and comfortable a sweater will actually be. So, did you guys think that there was any significance to the Betty Boop St. James Infirmary clip that he's shown over and over again?
Betty Boop is another Paramount property.
Well, yeah. Other than that.
I couldn't even tell what was going on in the Betty Boop clip. Just the way that it was spliced, and it's like that was Betty Boop. That's really all I knew about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was wondering, well, how's that going to make sense? Why is he watching Betty Boop? And then of course we get a joke reference back to it that it turns out that he couldn't turn it off. And it just kept playing. Right.
It's a good thing that they didn't play The Mummy over and over again, or he would come out insane.
Oh, yeah. I tried to watch that movie. I did not succeed.
You did not make it through The Mummy.
No.
Well, I think, it's a short episode. I think we covered just about anything. Was there any other points or questions that you guys had about Calypso that you wanted to talk about?
I want one of those Discovery popcorn buckets.
Yeah.
I liked what they did with the relationship between the AI and Kraft. How they built it up, how you could see the developing emotions, and how you had the very sweet dance scene where he does this favor for her. But then, of course, you see it all fall apart when he realizes that he's awkwardly having, pretty... Well, you could take it two ways. Either that he is actually feeling emotions for the AI, or just the fact that he's just been reminded very starkly of what he's missing, not being with his wife. And so then it's kind of heartbreaking for the AI. But unlike the Calypso of legend, I don't know if you read much of the mythology, but in the original legend, Calypso is trying to keep Odysseus for herself forever, and Zeus has to step in and tell her, send a message to her, you got to let this guy go. So the original Calypso did not have an epiphany and realize that she needed to release the man that she'd captured.
Right, but Kirk killed Zeus. He blew up his temple.
Well, that was Apollo.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well.
And so it leaves you, though, wondering, so you're kind of happy for him that he's got this chance now to go back. But then, poor Zora is just left alone again for forever, as far as we know.
I guess so.
So, yeah, it's got some really... It had more heft to it than the Tilly episode, as much as I loved watching Tilly, because I am definitely # Team Tilly. But but yeah, this one had a little bit more meat on its bones, even though it's much more disconnected from the continuity that we're aware of.
Yeah. And I mean, at this point, I'm not making any more predictions about anything, but I do hope that I did like the idea of it, and I hope that it is brought around some way, not only to to pay off our investment in it emotionally, but also because I just think it's kind of cool. Like, what if the ship, Zora should stick around, maybe.
There was one more thing I wanted to mention.
Sure.
That when Calypso in the myth releases Odysseus, she does have to provide him a raft to go.
Okay.
And of course, in this,
Funny face.
Zora had to provide the shuttlecraft. So
right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. You guys have brought me all the way around. I now like it. I do think that it is quite an achievement, Scott, when you were talking about how they were sort of showing the way that, the way they show the time that they spend together, and the fact that this could be an entire movie. This could be like an Outer Limits episode. Like takes place over an hour, and they do it in a very short amount of time. And we didn't get the sort of sinister thing where she's like, "Put on the suit and dance with me." Like we didn't get a thing like that. But I'm on board. I'm all with it. Well, usually on Discoverage we talk about, we check our threat ganglia and we see who we think is going to be killed off next on the show. But these short films focus on main characters. Actually, they seem to focus on maybe characters that won't return. So who knows if they're going to live or die? Let's instead speculate on what we think is going to happen in next month's short trek, The Brightest Star. Like I said, I'm not making predictions anymore. So
it looks like a prequel.
Mm-hmm.
But
okay.
I could be completely wrong. It looks like it's a prequel about like Saru deciding to leave his planet and join Starfleet.
Yeah.
But I also thought this was going to be some sort of spooky, scary thing. So I could be completely wrong about that too.
Well, but we see him say something about are there aliens out there or people up there? I can't remember what the line was, but
yeah,
it does seem to imply that it's before he is in Starfleet or knows about.
Do we know how long Kelpians live?
I don't believe we do.
Okay, maybe we'll find that out. Scott, you probably can't say anything, so I guess I won't ask you. Hopefully we'll get something like that. And I can't remember, I've reported on it in the past on the show, but I know that they have hired an actor who has similar skills to Doug Jones as far as performance and being kind of a tall, skinny guy. So maybe he'll play Saru's dad or a family member of him or something like that. So it'll be good to see more of Saru's planet. Ever since they introduced the Kelpians, I've wanted to know more about them. I think that there's somebody that if you dig into, they can be really interesting, but otherwise they could be really one note. Like their species are prey, and I sense death, and maybe you'd never go back to it. But I hope that they really show us more of his homeworld and what that's like.
Have you read Fear Itself?
I have not read Fear Itself. You caught me.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, good.
I actually have enjoyed all three of the Discovery books so far, but Fear Itself is definitely quite good.
Okay. Well, okay, so I got to check out more Voyager, I got to check out Leverage, and I got to read the Discovery prequel books, which I own but I have not read yet. Let's see. Speaking of Dread, we sort of spoke about Dread, not as much as I wanted to in this episode. I'm looking forward to the next episode. I kind of want to see how his people, how they get around day to day. It seems like it's not very fun to be a Kelpian or a him, if they're just prey, essentially. Like, do the books get into what it's like living on their planet?
Not a lot. But it does give us some insight in what it's like living as prey.
Okay. Well, yeah, I pay student loans, so I know what that's like. Well, that's it for our show this week. Thanks for joining us, listeners. If you like what you hear, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at EISTpod for updates and to get notified when new episodes of both Enterprising Individuals and Discoverage are released. You can also tweet to us on the show using the hashtag Discoverage or email us at eistpod@gmail.com. And while you're on the internet, why not head to your listening platform of choice and subscribe to our show. Give us a rating and a review if you think of it, because it really helps us out. Also, I wanted to mention that we've got merch. You can check out our t-shirts available available on our TeePublic store. Search for Just Enough Trope on TeePublic. That's our parent network. And get our snazzy Trekwear. And if you really want to support the show, stop by our Patreon page at patreon.com/EISTpod. And as always, if you like the show, tell a friend. Discoverage will return next month on Thursday, December 6th, for the next short trek, The Brightest Star. We'll go live just like we did tonight at 9 p.m. Central. So join us again then. In the meantime, you can check out our main show at enterprisingindividuals.com. Just last week, or actually just yesterday, we released a show about This Side of Paradise from the original series, which is a real high point of season 1, and it's one of my favorite episodes. Do you guys have favorite episodes of Trek? Thad, what's your favorite episode of Voyager?
Of Voyager, probably Blink of an Eye.
Oh, okay, that's a good one. Scott, do you have a favorite original series episode?
I cannot choose amongst my babies.
We talked about the Corbomite maneuver on... we talked about Doomsday Machine.
Doomsday Machine,
yeah.
Amok Time, City on the Edge Forever, kind of the usuals,
yeah.
I guess.
Devil in the Dark.
That's a good one.
Another good one, late first season episode. Really good stuff. So join us for another episode. It's actually a Voyager episode the next time we go live. And I'll give you a hint. It's often thought of as the worst Voyager episode. So
you'd be crossing some sort of threshold to watch that one?
Possibly, yeah. But I'll hold
Salamanders?
Little
salamanders?
Yeah, right. Thad, thanks so much for joining me on this show. Remind people where they can find you online.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tyrannicus. That's Tyranicus. And you can check out my Voyager podcast, Delta Flyer, at Delta Flyer Pod. And I also have a Stargate podcast, Stargate Weekly, which is just at Stargate Weekly.
And where are you guys at? What's coming up next on Delta Flyer Pod?
Delta Flyer, we're just going to record an episode this week about alliances. So we're coming up on the threshold too, actually.
Okay, awesome.
And
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead. You're fine.
No, I'm so sorry that you're coming up on threshold.
Oh, okay.
Scott, where can people find Generations Geek?
You can find our website, generationsgeek.com, which has links to all of our episodes. You can follow us on Twitter or on Instagram. You can also follow me on Twitter at @SMichaelPearson. And my personal website is www.yashure.net, YEAHSURE. And you can find out all sorts of stuff that I'm doing from there.
Great. What's coming up on Generations Geek?
The next episode, which will be going up any day now, science fiction writer William Leisner drops by, and we review First Man, the Neil Armstrong biopic.
Yeah.
And then Ella Skypes in at the end to tell us about seeing the Doctor Who season premiere in London.
Wasn't she? She was in a newspaper or something. I thought I saw in France.
Yes, yeah, she was the Doctor Who premiere party that she went to was covered on the website of Le Monde.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Strangely enough.
That's random. Well, that's great. Okay, well, check those out, everybody. Thanks again for joining us, and that's it for us. Thanks for listening. We're signing off, and this is Aaron for Thad and Scott saying, live long and prosper.